That was the moment I knew. Not just that the wedding was off, but that the entire relationship was a lie. I was standing there, in the chaos of what should have been a beautiful wedding rehearsal dinner, watching my stepmother, Sarah, walk out of the restaurant in tears, while my fiancée, Jessica, stood there with a look of smug, cold satisfaction on her face. Jessica had just publicly declared in front of our entire family and wedding party that Sarah wasn't family enough to sit in the front row at our ceremony, right before delivering the ultimate insult, suggesting Sarah sit in the back with the other guests because she was merely a +1 to my dad. I froze, absolutely paralyzed. My dad looked like he'd been punched in the gut. Everyone was silent. Was I wrong for what I did next? For everything that unfolded in the 48 hours that followed? Tell me, honestly, if you would have chosen your family over the person you were supposed to marry. The story starts, as all disastrous stories do, with what felt like a perfect beginning. Jessica and I had been together for 5 years. We met in college, our relationship was a whirlwind of shared dreams, and she was, outwardly, everything I thought I wanted. She was ambitious, beautiful, and came from a well-to-do traditional family. The engagement was lovely, on a rooftop overlooking the city, and the wedding planning began immediately. I knew Jessica was meticulous, maybe a little controlling, but I always rationalized it as her having a vision. The guest list, the venue, the catering, it all had to be exactly right, which meant exactly her way. I didn't push back much. I was just happy to be getting married. My family, however, was another matter entirely to her. My parents divorced when I was 12, and while it was amicable, my dad remarried a few years later. Sarah, my stepmother, came into our lives not as a replacement, but as an addition. She was, and still is, the warmest, most supportive, and kind-hearted woman you could ever meet. She never tried to take my mother's place. She simply loved my dad and, by extension, me. She was at every sports game, helped me with college applications, and taught me how to cook. In short, Sarah was family. Not step-family, just family. My biological mother, while supportive, lives across the country, and had always been fine with Sarah being a central figure in my life. Jessica, however, saw Sarah as a threat, or maybe just an obstacle to her perfect traditional family photo. The first major sign was the seating chart. Jessica insisted on an A list and a B list, and while I understood a pecking order for colleagues, I was shocked to find Sarah listed in the B list for the head table at the reception. Jessica explained with a chillingly calm voice that, "Your dad is the parent, so he sits with the parents. Sarah is his wife, not your parent, so she sits at a regular table." I argued, telling her Sarah is my parent, that she raised me just as much as my mom. Jessica just smiled and said, "Darling, let's not be dramatic. Blood is blood, and she's not blood." I pushed back enough that Sarah was begrudgingly moved to the parent table, but the seed of doubt and a deep-seated anger was planted. Then came the ceremony seating. This is where the front row debacle began. In traditional weddings, the first row is reserved for the immediate family, parents, siblings, grandparents. My mother and her side were going to take one half, and my father's side the other. My dad has no other immediate family, so the front row would be him, Sarah, and my sister. Jessica's side was massive. Both her parents, 2 sets of grandparents, and 3 siblings with their spouses. She drew up a very detailed seating diagram, and I noticed a small note next to the first row on my side. "Father, sister, 1 empty seat." I asked her about it. "Where's Sarah?" I asked, completely baffled. Her response was rehearsed and chilling. "Well, honey, we need symmetry. My side has 2 parents and 6 others. Your side has your mom and her husband, and then your dad and Sarah. That's 4 sets of adults. We only have so much space in the front row for the immediate family, the people who actually raised us. Sarah can sit in the second row with her own relatives, or a few of your dad's cousins. The front row is for the parents." I was livid. I pointed out that my mother's husband, David, was sitting in the front row, and he only met me a few years ago. Jessica's face hardened. "That's different. Your mother's side is full, and we can't separate her from her husband. Your father's side is only 2 people, and we need the symmetry." It was all a convoluted, passive-aggressive attempt to demote Sarah. It was a power play. It was a cold, calculated move to erase Sarah's importance in my life. I argued, I pleaded, I even shouted. Jessica eventually conceded, saying, Fine, she can sit in the second row, but no one else from your dad's side sits there. It has to look like a compromise. It wasn't a compromise. It was a concession of the bare minimum. I told Sarah and my dad that Jessica was being a nightmare about the seating, and to their eternal credit, they both said, "Don't worry about it. We just want to be there to celebrate you." They swallowed their pride for me, and I let them. I should have ended it there. The day of the rehearsal dinner arrived, 2 nights before the wedding. Everyone was gathered, my family, Jessica's family, the entire wedding party. The atmosphere was a strained excitement. During the toasts, Jessica's father stood up and gave a lovely, albeit stiff speech about welcoming me into their traditional and wonderful family. Then my dad stood up. He spoke about how proud he was, about how much he loved me, and he made a point, a beautiful, intentional point of including Sarah. He said, "I also want to thank Sarah, who has been a co-parent and a true mother to my son since he was a boy. We are both so excited for this chapter in his life." It was a genuine, heartfelt tribute. Jessica's face, however, was a thundercloud. After the toasts, the conversation shifted to the logistics of the wedding day, and that's when a bridesmaid innocently asked about the seating. "Wait, Dad, who is sitting where? I thought Sarah was sitting in the front row with you," she asked my dad. My dad, trying to avoid drama, just shrugged and said, "We'll figure it out." But Jessica wasn't going to let it go. She stepped in, right in front of the entire party, including a few of my dad's colleagues who were invited. She straightened her spine, smiled that fake, awful smile, and said, "It's actually all figured out. Sarah will be in the second row. The front row is for immediate parents. She just isn't family enough to sit there. It's a formality, really. She's a +1 to the father of the groom, not one of the parents. Honestly, we're doing her a favor by not making her sit in the very back with the other guests." The air just completely left the room. My sister gasped. My dad's face went from a gentle smile to a mask of absolute devastation. Sarah, bless her kind heart, just stood there, her hands twisting her napkin, a single perfect tear running down her cheek. She didn't say a word. She just turned, put her hand on my dad's shoulder, whispered, "I'm going to get some air," and walked out of the restaurant and into the dark parking lot. My dad didn't follow immediately. He looked at me, with a silent, pleading question in his eyes. "Are you going to let her do this?" That was the breaking point. Jessica looked at me, as if expecting my validation, her eyes daring me to challenge her. So that's the situation I was in. 2 nights before my wedding, I had watched the woman I was supposed to spend my life with deliberately, publicly, and maliciously hurt the woman who helped raise me, and who has been nothing but kind and loving to everyone she meets. I had let Jessica's control and passive-aggressive cruelty fester for months, all because I was afraid of conflict and obsessed with the perfect wedding. Now, the decision was no longer about a seating chart. It was about my soul, my values, and my loyalty. Before I tell you what happened next, what I said to Jessica, and what I did that night and the next day, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have gone through with the wedding, or would you have walked away? I genuinely want to know. I looked at Jessica, and I saw a stranger. All the love I thought I had for her evaporated, replaced by a cold, searing clarity. I walked over to my dad, who was still standing there, shell-shocked. "Dad," I said, my voice shaking, "go after her. Tell her I love her. I'll handle this." He just nodded, his eyes full of gratitude, and he hurried out the door. I turned back to the room. Everyone was watching me, a sea of silent, expectant faces. Jessica was still smiling, oblivious to the chasm she had just opened. "Well, that was a little dramatic of her," she commented dismissively. I walked directly to her, and I put my hand on her arm, gently at first. She leaned in, expecting some private reassurance. I didn't give her one, I said, loudly, clearly, for everyone to hear. "There won't be a wedding, Jessica." Her smile vanished. "What did you just say?" she whispered, her voice tight with disbelief. "I said the wedding is off. Effective immediately," I repeated, my voice now loud and firm. "You don't get to treat the people I love, the people who are my family, like second-class citizens to prop up your own pathetic need for control and tradition. Sarah is family. You know that. You just wanted to hurt her to prove a point. And that point is that you are a cruel, cold, and utterly selfish person." Her parents immediately rushed over. Her mother started hissing at me. "How dare you speak to my daughter that way? Over a seat?" Her father tried to grab my shoulder. I shook him off. "It's not about a seat, sir. It's about respect. Your daughter showed none. She has no heart, and I will not marry a woman who actively tries to tear my family down." Jessica's face was now a horrifying mix of rage and panic. "You are overreacting! This is ridiculous! You are ruining everything!" She shrieked. "No, you ruined it, Jessica. The minute you decided your ego was more important than my stepmother's feelings, you ruined our marriage before it even began. I am done. I'm calling the venue and telling them to cancel the reservation in the morning. I'll deal with the financial disaster, but I will not spend one more second with you." I turned to the server who was hovering awkwardly nearby. "Could you please box up the rest of the food? Everything here is finished." I grabbed my bag, walked out the door, and got into my car. I drove straight to my dad's house. Sarah was sitting on the porch swing, wrapped in a blanket, with my dad holding her hand. I walked up to them, and I sat down on the step in front of them. "I broke off the engagement," I told them. Sarah's eyes widened, and my dad squeezed my shoulder. "I'm so sorry, Sarah. You are my mother. You are family. I should have stood up for you months ago, and I regret every day that I didn't. I love you both." Sarah started crying again, but this time they were tears of relief, and she pulled me into the tightest hug. "Oh, honey," she sobbed. "I'm so proud of you for having the courage." The next 48 hours were a whirlwind of absolute hell. Jessica called relentlessly, alternating between hysterics and venomous insults. She threatened lawsuits over the canceled venue, the catering, and the non-refundable deposits. She sent a barrage of texts to my sister, painting me as a cruel, cold-hearted monster who was too attached to his deadbeat dad's mistress. I blocked her number. I called the venue, the caterer, and the photographer, canceling everything and accepting the financial hit. It was tens of thousands of dollars, a brutal lesson in the cost of a mistake. But the relief was priceless. My friends and the non-family members of the wedding party were incredibly supportive. They had all seen the subtle cruelty in Jessica, and were relieved I had finally escaped. The greatest closure came on what would have been my wedding day. My sister and I convinced my dad and Sarah to take a long weekend trip to the coast, using the money I had managed to recoup from a few of the smaller vendors. We didn't do a big celebration, just a quiet, peaceful dinner on the beach. As the sun set, my dad raised a glass. "To new beginnings," he said, looking straight at me, "and to the people who always remember who matters." Sarah and I clinked our glasses to his. It was the most honest, pure moment of family I had ever experienced, a stark contrast to the transactional nightmare I had just escaped. The financial debt was real, but I had saved my family, and in doing so, I had saved myself from a lifetime of being managed, controlled, and devalued. The woman who couldn't respect my stepmother would never have respected me. So, that's my story. It cost me a fortune, a fiancé, and a reputation with a few people, but I wouldn't change it. I chose the woman who nurtured me over the woman who tried to diminish me. If you were on my side, if you think I made the right choice by calling off the wedding for the sake of my stepmom and my family's peace, then please, like this video. Subscribe for more stories like this from my life and others who stood up for themselves. And please, share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments section below. Was Jessica truly terrible, or was I too harsh? I want to hear your perspective. I'll see you all in the next story.